Folks, those videos were submitted anonymously from Bangladesh, and they show what a serious threat climate change is causing.
Yeah, I agree, man. That is some pretty disturbing footage. We sent a reporter to Bangladesh, and Joe is coming to you live tonight from a very vulnerable part of the world.
Hey, news team, rise up! How you doing? Here we are at Bangladesh. It's a river called Magna River. And as you can see, because of anthropogenic climate change, the sea levels are rising up towards the land. There could possibly be a flood soon. The people near the coastline are clearly in danger. They are very vulnerable to this natural disaster. I don't know what they're gonna do if they don't start to fix their problems. As you can clearly see behind me, it's very bad. It's getting very bad by the year. We're gonna tune into our info commercial to show you what the vulnerabilities these people are facing.
This is Rise Up Incorporation with Joe Keefe, Matt Guidi, and E. Chao Lu. Rise as one and conquer the change. Vulnerability temperature increases in Bangladesh. Temperatures are expected to rise by 4 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels by the end of the century. If we do not limit carbon output into the atmosphere, Bangladesh is looking at more extreme droughts and floods, melting glaciers, and a decrease in food production. This will also cause slow reduction of poverty. Temperature increase causes a shorter rainy season, which causes a decrease in farming production, which is how many families make their livings. This will cause these families to find new ways to make a living and thus changing their way of culture. Higher temperatures are also destroying ecosystems and killing animals. Vulnerability, sea level rise. The sea levels are rising in Bangladesh more so than any other place on this earth. Rising temperatures are causing glaciers to melt, resulting in rising sea levels by the inch each year. Bangladesh is vulnerable to massive floods, droughts, and cyclones. Rising sea level causes loss of valuable farmland and destruction of towns and cities that allow the people of Bangladesh to survive as one. This can cause people like farmers to spend more money buying crops they could grow on their lands. Cyclones and floods. The increased volume of rainfall caused by climate change during the past decade has intensified the flood problem. Extreme cyclones are becoming a huge problem as well. Cyclones and flooding have a huge effect on people in Bangladesh. It ruins their homes, farmlands, and even kills members of their family. When something like this happens, it is devastating and takes years and money that many people don't have to rebuild. The government may also need to pay to help, but with a decrease in agriculture, they need to import more than normal. Decrease in agriculture. Rising sea level means sinking land. The water that is rising above the land is very dirty and polluted, causing the farmlands to become infertile. With the flooding and torrential rain happening, the land that is once used for farmland is becoming soaked with salt, making the soil that the families have worthless. It causes families to move and find new land because agriculture is how many of these families make their livings and support their families. GDP of agriculture produces 45% of the labor force, and this could affect growth of the country through shocks to trade and investments. Bangladesh's population health. Flooding, cyclones, and monsoons contaminate the water available for the people near the coast. The dirty drinking water causes people to get sick and can even be lethal. According to the WHO, 60% of the population has to endure unsafe drinking water. With the country already in extreme poverty, the contamination of water, agricultural lands, and the destroying of villages puts this country at serious risk of losing it all. Thermal energy and hydropower. With ice glaciers melting and an increase in water throughout the country, Bangladesh can take advantage and use this water for energy in the forms of hydropower, and thus giving them the opportunity to produce geothermal energy. It is said that the economy is to grow by 90% in the next decade, and this new source of power can play a huge factor. Growing crops from increased rainfall. For farmers without damaged agricultural lands, they have more rain to help their crops. The country can use hydropower to run their cities and even have more drinking water readily available. This is also a great way for the government to make money. It could increase the GDP of agriculture to an even higher percent and thus making the economy stronger through exports. Opportunity. Possibilities for solar energy. This idea of solar energy can be great for Bangladesh. With the increase in temperature and sun appearing, they can use solar energy to run their cities, cars, and even help plants grow in greenhouses. This gives great opportunity for the government to invest in solar energy and give the people of Bangladesh electricity, since 90% of the population is without it. Mitigation, restoration, and protection. Restoring ecosystems, building and engineering levees provide jobs to solve hazards. These examples of protection will allow the country to be less affected by torrential rains and flooding, keeping their agricultural lands healthy and keeping the economy healthy. Poverty levels will also start to decrease. Opportunity. Marketing. Rise in temperature boosts the marketing in Bangladesh, bringing out more resources from the rising sea levels. Bangladesh offers very low production costs and has become one of the most cost-efficient production hubs in the world. Low production costs, an enthusiastic and rapidly emerging private sector, and a tremendous international export success for especially the garment industry are all opportunities Bangladesh can thrive off.
Economy before the Industrial Revolution. Bangladesh was created out of chaos in the early 1970s. Their local economies relied mostly on agriculture and farming at this time. Nearly 60% of Bangladesh's population was considered in poverty in 1971. Bangladesh had become one of the poorest and least developed economies in Asia. Economy after the Industrial Revolution. After the Industrial Revolution, the economy increased tremendously. They established factories that export garments throughout the world. Bangladesh has become one of the world's largest exporters of apparel. This has created millions of jobs and helped drive down the country's poverty rate, but the rapid change has also created new problems for Bangladesh. The proportion of manufactured production grew from 9% of GDP in 1970 to 19.3% of GDP in 1999. Since the Industrial Revolution and the garment industry, poverty levels have decreased by almost half. Although the work conditions may not be the best and the pay is not so great, groups of people who suffer the most are able to work and make a living. The poverty headcount ratio at national poverty lines is now 31.5% as of 2010. Bangladesh's economy has grown roughly 6% per year since 1996. History of fossil fuels. Bangladesh contributes 1% of global greenhouse gas emissions. That's nothing compared to China or the US, who are the world's largest contributors to carbon dioxide emissions. The bitter irony is that many of the places which may suffer the worst effects are places contributing the least to climate change causes. History of fossil fuels. In 2011, Bangladesh peaked at using 71.53% of their total fossil fuel energy according to IndexMundi.com. Bangladesh is using more fossil fuels than being produced. Looking at the graph, over the past 40 years, the consumption of fossil fuels is on a steep increase. In 1980, Bangladesh set up their country's first export-oriented garment factory. Today, there is more than 4,000 garment factories in Bangladesh. Deforestation in Bangladesh. Scientists have reported that forest loss has reached 90%. It will soon jump to 100% if no action is taken. It is estimated that the worst affected forests of Bangladesh were the inland deciduous cell forest, with more than half being depleted. Impact of deforestation. For a balanced ecology, 25% of a country's land area should be covered with forests. Bangladesh has 6% of its land forest, which causes the ecosystems to run improperly. Deforestation can lead to a reduction of rainfall because of the lack of evaporation from leaves, and from the reduction in the absorptive capacity of the ground, which can ultimately lead to droughts. Lifestyle. Carbon footprint. The CO2 emissions levels have risen considerably within the last 30 years and seem to be on a continuing upswing as seen in the figure below. However, Bangladesh's annual carbon dioxide emissions are 0.3 metric tons per year compared to 19.34 tons for the United States. Bangladesh's carbon footprint has increased tremendously since the 1980s when they made their first garment factory. Everyday lifestyle. Everyday transportation is essential to facilitate economic growth in Bangladesh. They have all types of transportation by land, sea, and air. However, the most prominent is by public transportation or bikes. Everyday housing is much different. The homes are low developed and most do not have electricity. They do not contribute to global emissions at all. Money. Many people in Bangladesh are poor. The country's technology is below standard along with the country's developments. This results from lack of industrialization. The government is having to spend extra money on protection from flooding, like the 7,000-kilometer long system of coastal dikes. Classes in Bangladesh. Poor people. At least 45 million people live in Bangladesh. Almost one-third of the population lives below the poverty line. Many don't have enough money to support their families, and they tend to suffer from hunger. They have a low carbon footprint. Upper class families. Only 9.75% of the country's population fits into this category. These types of families have high end technology in their homes and drive luxury cars. They have a higher carbon footprint, but not nearly as much as an upper class would in the United States or China. Vulnerable populations. Women. As the majority of the world's poor, women are the most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. During disaster, more women die than men because they are not warned, they cannot swim, or they cannot leave the house alone. Drought, deforestation, and erratic rainfall cause women to work harder to secure natural resources and livelihood. According to National Institute of Population and Research Training Bangladesh Demographic Health Survey, Dhaka 2009, 65% of women aged 15 to 49 are unemployed. Poor people. In densely populated and land scarce Bangladesh, poor people are the most susceptible population by climate change. Natural disasters caused by climate change will break their household easily than the other populations. Hunger and lack of shelter. Many of these people have an inadequate diet and suffer from periods of food shortage. One half of all rural children are chronically malnourished and 14% suffer from acute malnutrition. Indigenous people. Bangladesh has an extremely high population density, a low resource base, and a high incidence of natural disasters. So climate change will have a huge impact to indigenous people, like the coastal areas and the large river delta, will have floods and landslides more frequently, which will make the people there become homeless. Also, soil erosion and a deforestation will destroy their living area to break their economy balance. Farmers. Farmers rely on their land to provide for their families. Mass flooding and rainfall caused by anthropogenic climate change contaminates the soil and will make output of crops decrease. Sea level rising destroys the coastal agriculture land, which makes many farmers lose their lands so they will get less profits. Also, temperature increase causes insect infestation rise, crop and livestock disease, which will make farmers' lives become a lot harder. Trade-offs. First trade-off. The long-term average sunshine data shows that the period of bright sunshine hours in the coastal regions of Bangladesh is long due to climate change. So solar energy can be used by consuming science to build equipment. Second trade-off. Spend money to manage deforestation to save agriculture lands for farmers. Third. In the islands and the southern coastal belt of Bangladesh, long-term wind flow can bring wind power. Fourth. Increasing marine traffic by decreasing the transportation on the land due to sea level rise. To promote export and import. Fifth. Improving industrial production mode by using resources to create new product method to decrease the effect brought by climate change.
For the UNFCCC entry, UNFCCC started in 1992 but was not enacted. Bangladesh signed on right away on 9 June 1992. Bangladesh ratified it acceptance beginning 15 April 1994 and went into action 14 July 1994. For the Kyoto entry into force 16 February 2005. The protocol was adopted at the third session of the Conference of the Parties to the UNFCCC. Bangladesh is all for the Kyoto Protocol, but without the help and support of other developed countries. The Kyoto Protocol had no real impact. Bangladesh diplomacy is too little and too poor to have a strong say in education, so the protocol didn't work. UNFCCC platform. Bangladesh is all for the UNFCCC and the Kyoto Protocol. They are very vulnerable for climate change. Being a non-Next One country, Bangladesh contributes less than 1% of the world's carbon footprint. Desperate to slow down greenhouse gas emission because of rising sea levels. However, at the same time, Bangladesh is also working to achieve lower carbon as well as more resilient development. With this in mind, this INDC aims to put forth mitigation actions that Bangladesh can take to tackle its growing emissions and to play its role in global efforts to limit temperature rise to 2 degrees or preferably 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. Bangladesh UNFCCC and Kyoto Protocol history. Bangladesh has now changed their view on the UNFCCC or Kyoto Protocol. They are still 100% on board
on board with both because they are one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change. If CO2 emissions do not stop increasing or even stay where they are now, Bangladesh could be underwater within the next century. Bangladesh diplomacy is too little and too poor to have a strong say in education. Very hard to get projects to work. NAPA involvement to Bangladesh platform. NAPA is the program provides a process to identify priority activities that respond to their urgent and immediately needs to adapt to climate change. Bangladesh benefits from this program in many ways, including that they struggle with low economic strength, inadequate infrastructure, low level of social development, lack of institutional capital, and a higher dependency on the natural resource. INDC involvement to Bangladesh platform. Each country that decided to participate in this group has to publicly outline what post-2020 climate actions they intend to take under a new international agreement. They are joining this group to help maintain a key path to help stopping climate change. Some key things of the Bangladesh is mitigation, contribution, and their adaptation component. CDM involvement to Bangladesh platform. The Clean Development Mechanism provides Annex 1 parties to implement project activities that reduce emissions in non-Annex 1 parties in return for certificate emission reductions. Some things Annex 1 parties have contributed to Bangladesh include provide cooking stoves, more efficient lighting, composting of organic waste, and improving clean efficiency in the brick-making industry. MOEF involvement to Bangladesh platform. With Bangladesh depleting forests at an alarming rate of 90%, something had to be done, so they joined this organization to put a halt to this. This will impact Bangladesh in a good way if they can get the depletion of forests down to a more normal percent and maybe even find new ways to use the resources that can be found from these forests. EDD Plus involvement to Bangladesh platform. Reducing emissions from deforestation and degradation involves some kind of incentive for changing the way forest resources are used. Offers a new way of curbing CO2 emissions through paying for actions that prevent forest loss or degradation. This program impacts Bangladesh in a good way because of its widely depleting forest and it offers a new way that they can emit CO2. Bangladesh involved in Kyoto. Bangladesh involved in the Kyoto Protocol positively because under Kyoto Protocol, industrialization nations pledged to cut their yearly emissions of carbon, so the effect by climate change will be decreased, and Bangladesh is already facing huge risk of climate change. Like about two-thirds of Bangladesh populations are employed in the agriculture sector and the agriculture area are heavily affected by climate change through sea level rising. Bangladesh involved in UNFCCC. The objective of the UNFCCC is to stabilize greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere at a level that would prevent dangerous interference with the climate system, and Bangladesh had the worst effect of global climate change, such as rising sea levels, more intense cyclones, flooding, and heat waves, which increasingly confront the country challenge for development progress. However, Bangladesh has the outstanding climate change mitigation responses. Bangladesh climate change impact movement in UNFCCC and Kyoto. With 140 million people, Bangladesh is one of the world's densest nations and also one of the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Bangladesh has experienced several floods every 4 to 5 years, and every year natural disasters has a widespread effect on Bangladesh, touching every corner of the country in the past. However, UNFCCC and the Kyoto Protocol can decrease the effect brought by climate change by controlling the concentration of greenhouse gas in the atmosphere.
A broad view of the future recommendations for Bangladesh include Bangladesh needs to keep participating in international negotiations. They need to keep educating and stressing how important mitigation of anthropogenic climate change is to them and the rest of the world. And from a political standpoint, Bangladesh should have representatives and diplomats that genuinely want to address the climate change problem globally. Specific recommendations for Bangladesh. Bangladesh as a country also needs to continue to reduce their emissions. Realistically, Bangladesh cannot reduce their emissions too much because their economy would crash, but maybe in negotiations ask for investments into geoengineering or solar/hydro engineering plants. As a country, they need to reduce their deforestation rates and use other environmental friendly techniques. They need to plant more trees to restore the contaminated land. Politically, Bangladesh has to keep on their country to reduce as much greenhouse gas emissions as possible without the slowing of production levels. Cost benefits. The benefits of investing in Bangladesh or spending money on new technologies to be more efficient outweighs the costs, because if not, Bangladesh will soon be underwater. In each of the Gen Games, each country wanted to produce instead of invest, and this caused the final generations to have limited resources to be used. Some countries had higher rates to start out with, and when they produced, they just improved their country. In order to reduce emissions, our country needs to invest their time and effort into programs like RED and MOEF, for example, which would help us become more of an Annex 1 country or more developed. Financial costs of future generations. Being a non-developed country, money is not a premium. They will need to invest in programs like MOEF and RED, and even selling some of their CERs in order to help improve their country and face climate change positively. They will need to invest money in buildings, planting more trees, trying to boost their economy, and improving new crop ideas with their saturated soil. For the future generations, we think Bangladesh needs to start expanding a bit more to be able to support themselves and invest in new green technologies.
Concerns for future generations. With rising seas and global increase in temperature, will housing and farms even be available for future generation? All it takes is a group of dedicated individuals to take a stand and show everyone else how to mitigate and adapt to the climate change around them. For future generations, we think people of Bangladesh need to adapt to what is happening around them and make a change to what past generations have done in order to fix some of the climate change issues like rising seas, salinity to farmland, and deforestation. Externalities and implications of future generations. It can be fatal to future generations if Bangladesh, along with other countries, do not do their part in the post-Kyoto Protocol agreement. This contract is legally binding, so other countries will continue to follow through with their part for the future. This will include emitting less, using renewable resources, and finding and using new green technology. Theory of justice. Justice is based on a concept of moral righteousness that incorporates varying perspectives of fairness, ethics, rationality, religion, and law. Reducing deforestation and improving the environment will make the vulnerable people avoid natural disasters and let them live as other people in the world. Asking for investments and reducing greenhouse gas emissions is part of a justice that will help this country. We think that countries who have benefited the most from emitting greenhouse gases should have to invest more in technology for vulnerable countries like Bangladesh, who emit less than 1% of global greenhouse gases. Recommendation concern vulnerable groups. Our vulnerable groups are women, indigenous people, poor people, and farmers. Reducing deforestation, asking for investments, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions will help each one of these vulnerable groups interact with each other and make money, and helping them rise as one.
Conclusion. Climate change around the world is becoming a major issue to many developing countries, and soon will be a problem for the developed countries also if we do not start to mitigate and adapt. Bangladesh is one of the most vulnerable countries to anthropogenic climate change and will soon be underwater if we keep emitting as much greenhouse gases as we are. They are experiencing more natural disasters than ever before. Many people are very desperate for a solution. They need all the help and support they can get. Donations to help rise up against the change can be sent to www.gofundme.com/G9EV9UQC. All donations will be sent helping with new technologies to conquer climate change.
With the help from you guys, we can rise as one and conquer the change together. Please help these vulnerable populations.
Peace, Bama!